Welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about Jesus and Nirvana. The teachings of Jesus, central to Christianity, have inspired millions of people across the globe to live lives of compassion, love, and spiritual fulfillment. While the concept of nirvana is typically associated with Buddhism, there are profound parallels between the teachings of Jesus and the Buddhist path to enlightenment. Both traditions emphasize transcending worldly attachments, overcoming suffering, and seeking inner peace. Both seek a transformation of the self that leads to spiritual liberation. In this talk, I will explore how the teachings of Jesus can guide individuals on the path to nirvana, despite the differences in religious context and terminology. Both Jesus' teachings and the Buddhist doctrine begin with an acknowledgement of human suffering. In Buddhism, suffering, dukkha, is considered a fundamental part of human existence. The Four Noble Truths outline the nature of suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering, the Eightfold Path. Likewise, Jesus' ministry was centered around alleviating suffering, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus is depicted as healing the sick, comforting the distressed, and offering hope to those in despair. His teachings on forgiveness and love address the internal suffering caused by anger, guilt, and resentment. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount provides the foundation for much of his moral and spiritual guidance. In it, he teaches that those who mourn will be comforted. The meek will inherit the earth, and the pure in heart will see God. These principles align with the Buddhist idea of transcending attachment to the material world and cultivating inner purity. Jesus' teachings on loving one's enemies and forgiving others resonate with the Buddhist practice of letting go of hatred and attachment, key elements in the pursuit of nirvana. One of the most significant parallels between Jesus' teachings and the Buddhist path is the emphasis on detachment from worldly desires. In Buddhism, attachment is seen as the root of suffering. The desire for wealth, status, and sensual pleasure creates a cycle of craving and dissatisfaction that prevents individuals from attaining nirvana. Similarly, Jesus speaks of the dangers of attachment to material wealth. In the Gospel of Matthew, he warns, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven." Matthew 6:19-20. Jesus calls his followers to seek spiritual treasures rather than material ones, to focus on what is eternal rather than transient. The idea of selflessness is central to both Jesus' teachings and the path to nirvana. In Buddhism, the ego is viewed as an illusion, and liberation comes through the realization of anatta, or non-self. Similarly, Jesus teaches his followers to deny themselves and take up their cross, a symbol of surrendering the self for a higher purpose. In Matthew 16:24, Jesus says, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." This call to selflessness is akin to the Buddhist practice of overcoming the attachment to one's individual identity in order to experience oneness with the universe. Compassion, karuna, and loving kindness, metta, are essential virtues in both Christianity and Buddhism. Jesus' teachings on love form the cornerstone of his message. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus commands his followers to love God with all their heart, soul, and mind, and to love their neighbors as themselves. This radical love extends even to one's enemies. Jesus challenges his followers to love those who persecute them and to pray for those who harm them. This radical compassion and unconditional love are in harmony with the Buddhist emphasis on developing compassion for all living beings. Buddhism teaches that cultivating compassion is necessary for the attainment of nirvana. Through compassion, one overcomes the barriers that separate individuals from one another and from the world. The Buddhist teachings emphasize that the liberation of the self is intimately connected to the liberation of all beings. In this regard, Jesus' call to love one's neighbor as oneself mirrors the Buddhist practice of extending compassion to all beings, regardless of their status or behavior. Both Jesus and the Buddha point to an inner transformation as the key to spiritual liberation. In Buddhism, nirvana is not a place, but a state of mind, freedom from the attachments and delusions that cloud one's perception of reality. The Buddha taught that enlightenment occurs through meditation, mindfulness, and ethical living, leading to an awakening to the true nature of existence. Similarly, Jesus teaches that the kingdom of God is not a physical realm, but an inner reality. In Luke 17:21, he says, "The kingdom of God is within you." This suggests that the path to spiritual fulfillment lies not in external circumstances, but in the transformation of the heart and mind. Jesus' emphasis on inner purity and spiritual rebirth also aligns with the Buddhist understanding of enlightenment. In the Gospel of John, Jesus speaks of being born again through the Spirit. This inner rebirth echoes the Buddhist idea of awakening to the true nature of the self, transcending ignorance, and achieving a state of peace and wisdom. Both paths require a profound inner change, a letting go of ego, illusion, and the attachment to the material world in order to experience true freedom. While the teachings of Jesus and the path to nirvana arise from different religious contexts, they share striking similarities in their emphasis on love, detachment, selflessness, compassion, and inner transformation. Both traditions offer a path to transcend the suffering inherent in human existence, leading to spiritual fulfillment and liberation. By following Jesus' teachings on love, forgiveness, and humility, individuals can cultivate the qualities necessary for the realization of nirvana, a state of profound peace and enlightenment. In this way, the teachings of Jesus can serve as a guide not only for Christians seeking salvation, but for anyone on a path to spiritual awakening.